you've done it all. You've done wholesale, you've done department stores, you've done retail stores. How have you managed that in your career?
But I'm in a position now that I'm trying to restructure everything because everything is changing. The last 4 years, 5 years, everything's changing. So I think, yeah, you have to go with the time, so really.
And how are you restructuring your business? What are you doing?
But indeed, before I was doing 2 collections. Now I'm doing 4 collections. I do pre-fall, fall, and summer, and resource. So really, I have to juggle all that, and plus, in the same time, I have an overseas market that I have to look at. And that happened in the last 4 or 5 years. So really, I'm trying to restructure all the situation.
And Magdalena, you obviously had a solo career and then very recently became the head designer for Seduce, which is another way to change your career trajectory and guarantee longevity in the sector. Can you give us a bit of an idea of the difference between managing your own label and working for a big retail group like Seduce?
Well, I think one of the rewarding things about working with a big retailer is to have your designs showcased quite widely in the marketplace, and more excitedly with the way that we're working the Seduce ranges. Now you get sort of a designer experience, but within a retail space, and then the price point is very attainable. So I think that's been the difference, really achieving the sort of production and distribution level that I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. And then I only get to focus on anything pretty, as I say, in the office. I don't have to worry about, I guess, the business side of it. I do in terms of, I have to make sure the designs translate into business, but beyond that. And I do also collaborate with our marketing teams and just making sure that visually the brand looks, the part that it needs to be, but otherwise I'm, free from all the difficult business decisions.
And from a production perspective, how is producing the ranges different to your own label in terms of cycle? I mean, you obviously produced 2 main collections previously.
Yeah, so it's monthly collections now, and there's weekly drops into store. So there's constantly product that needs to roll over from one into the next, and then you have to make sure that the range flows through nicely as the deliveries are coming into store, and then it's kind of it's like a matrix almost. It has to flow this way, and then it has to work well within the drops as well. So it's quite interesting, but what is even more interesting is, as a solo designer, I was able to, you come up with an amazing idea and you don't really think about how that translates to the customer. You kind of relying on quite a educated customer to take that trend on board, whereas now it's like, how will I inject and extend a customer with a new trend, but without intimidating her, making it accessible for her to attain and be able to wear it.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, you had your own fashion label and then you left that fashion label. Do you think that there is so much pressure on solo designers? We've seen it even with bigger designer brands like Josh Goot, who went into administration this year. Is it possible to sustain a long-term career in this industry as a solo designer?
Look, I've explored that for many years now. When I look at an expense, a higher price point, basically you now compete, because the world's become much smaller. International designers are able to sell in Australia, and they've sort of made their price points a little bit more accessible. So when you're working on an Australian designer level, it gets quite expensive, but you don't have $500,000 to shoot a lookbook, and you don't have $5 million to do a show. So therefore, or you don't have a $10 million advertising budget. So it's very difficult to compete. I think there is always a place for creativity. But Australia is a small demographic, a small population, so that's what restricts us from a homegrown label. And then I think it's all about working with you know, bigger companies and companies that can take on the production, take on the advertising, take on, you know, the retail space, and then you can showcase your designs that way best.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, you know, you were appointed to Seduce, and then Marnie Skillings was appointed as the head designer for Ladak, and then Therese Rawsthorne is the head designer at Witchery.
Yeah.
So, and there are many other examples, but they don't come to mind. It's funny watching the transition of independent Australian designers into the bigger retail group, but I don't think it's to their detriment. I think that it benefits both parties. For once designers can focus on creativity, and for once retailers can focus on the business, which is what they're good at, and not necessarily the design element.
Well, I think for the first time in a long time, I think Australian retailers are sort of sounding a lot more exciting than your Topshops and your Zaras. And so I think definitely it's about the synergy of the creative and the business, as you said, and really building that to a strength where it's achievable and attainable.
Sorry, Nicola, you wanted to add to that? I think.
Yeah, but I think you have to continue to do something that is ready to wear, because I'm doing that too, like NF by Nicola Finetti. Like, but it's a completely different way to approach fashion, or to do it a creativity, or to have a passion. Yeah, that is more or less business. Yeah. The other one can be business too if you know how to structure.
Yes. With your Nicola Finetti diffusion line at Maya, do you have a different production schedule for that?
Yeah, I don't sell anymore to Maya for more than 3 seasons.
Oh, okay.
I sell to David Jones.
Okay.
But
I'm so educated. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, because I'm maybe subtle, not that like flashy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You're
so
a
what
quiet
I was
achiever.
saying.
Yes, what you were saying.
What I was saying.
With the with working with David Jones on the on your line.
Yeah, David Jones and other retails. And again, I'm expanding overseas, so I think in one way or the other is a possibility there. It's logic. We are not like a Gaultier or Karl Lagerfeld, but really still I think it's, because the world is very big, so still you have a possibility. You have to have patience, you have to have strength, and you have to have a little bit of money and try to work it out properly, everything. I think it's very difficult, but not that impossible.
Gary, what are the biggest challenges that you have in running an independent label?
Oh, there's so many. I guess finance is definitely one, being a small business, having the capital to kind of support your brand, and you know, being a small independent label, there's kind of a limits and what you can do in terms of, you know, fabrics and how big you want your collection to be, and you know, the production side. But for me, like, it's more about identifying what works for your brand, for your, you know, for your small brand, and working with the retailers and the customers that buy, that support your brand, and working it through that way. So kind of working out what they want in store, like, and apply it and push it through.
And you showed this week on the Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week schedule, and there's been a lot of really positive feedback from the press, and the word reinvention has been thrown around quite a bit. Is that an important part in, you know, having a long career in the industry?
Absolutely.
Different?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's, you know, everything's all, you know, fashion industry is changing a lot. And I guess you've got to kind of keep up with what's going on, but also, you know, work out who your customer is and what she wants, and deliver that through your collection, rather than, I guess, you know, when I first started out, it was all, you know, designing and draping and doing a lot of that kind of stuff, but which was amazing and great, and that kind of what established me in the industry. But as you grow, like, you want to grow with your customer, and you want to grow with your boutiques to expand and, you know, gain more interest locally and overseas. So I guess, you know, it's important to,
And how do you manage the business side of the Gary Bajeni label? Do you have a business manager? Do you do it yourself? Do you have it like...
I'm a one-man band at the moment, I mean, I have a part-time bookkeeper that comes in once a fortnight that kind of looks after that sort of stuff, but I basically do invoicing, designing, cutting, quality control, boxing, talking to all the buyers. I do all my own selling, which I felt that that was something I wanted to do. Being a small brand, I wanted to really focus on, you know, engaging more with the boutiques and, you know, department stores and you know, understanding who they are and what they want and what they buy. I think for me that's really important, and you know, I kind of put it all together and okay, this is what they buy, this is what they're not, and then, you know, write it all.
So you do the analysis
Yeah,
after each season?
I think so. I guess, you know, or else you kind of just biting your tail all the time if you're just not paying attention to that side. Like about a year and a half ago, I started working with a business advisor, and he came in and, you know, was, because I'm not very good with numbers, but so yeah, he came in and made me restructure everything in terms of like cutting the collection down and focusing on what works.
Cutting it down from what? Can you give us an idea of like what the...
Well, you know, for instance, for me, like I was doing about 50 pieces a season, and he made me cut it down to half because there was a lot that were getting cancelled. And, you know, when you look at it as a small business, you know, making patterns, buying fabrics, samples and stuff like that, it's just worked out to be so expensive. So little areas like that, and also selling the collection myself, which was...
So he or she advised you to take that road? To
Absolutely,
sell it yourself?
yeah. I mean, it was a lot more on my shoulders, but I've been managing, I've been doing it for the past 3 seasons now, so I've been increasing my own sales as well, which is, yeah, and, you know, yeah, so...
Okay. And can you work on the other side of the market? You work with some of the biggest companies, both here in Australia and overseas, and we had a discussion yesterday that it doesn't matter what size your company is, the principles are the same when it comes to good retail, good design, good creativity, and good business. What do you see in this current market? We live in an omni-channel environment where we're past traditional brick and mortar stores, we're past traditional runway shows, we're past, you know, all the traditions that we have in real time, and now we have so many multiple platforms. What do you see as the hallmarks of success with some of the big clients that you work with? What is it that they do right in this current trading environment that makes them so successful?
Wow, that's a great question. The hallmark of success, we work primarily with global brands, as you mentioned. Some of the largest brands and retailers in the world.
Yeah.
There's one client of ours that I work with in Hong Kong. They spend about $40 million a year just to buy samples.
Wow.
And that's how much they spend yearly just on the money to spend on samples.
That's how much Gary spends.
Not counting, not counting samples they get for free, because some of the vendors provide free samples. But hallmark of success, I would say, would be that single-minded focus on your customers. Oftentimes, we in the fashion business, we tend to focus a lot on collection, which is important. We focus a lot on the product itself, which is important. We focus on operational excellence, that's very much important. I do not deny that. But oftentimes, we do not pay enough attention looking from the outside in, looking from perspective of our target consumer in terms of the buying journey. The entire consumer experience before they even step to the store, or some of our customers, they were purely online. You know, a lot of buying decisions are all done online. There's a lot of social media conversation back and forth. Like right now, we have this fashion week here in Sydney, new collection being launched. But what do the trade press talk about? The new collection. What do the consumer talk about new collection? And the successful brands have the ability to capture all these social media conversation. They understand the consumer sentiment. They're able to capture that online and publish a report for them to do the analysis. And my view would be more like putting more effort now looking from outside in, understanding as a consumer, when you're going through the buying process, every single touch point, omni-channel, be it online, working through the retail environment, working the franchise operation, what is the experience they go through? I think that's very important.
Absolutely. And like you were saying, even with social media, you know, a lot of the panelists who are here today brought someone along to take photos for the social media feeds, and I know it'll very much be the same for us. So the touch points are increasing every moment. Any opportunity that you have to touch base with your consumer shouldn't be missed.
Right. If I may just add one point over here, increasingly with looking into the consumers in the market, which is essentially digital native. For some older generation folks like me, you know, social media, you know, wasn't that prevalent in the past. But here, the new generation, they're literally born with tablets on their heads. So it is not unusual to just check for information online.
Yeah.
Before I moved to Hong Kong, I spent about 2.5 years in Shanghai. Shanghai itself has 20 million people in the city. Beijing has 20 million people. We're talking about geographic as a constraint. Shanghai itself is a huge market in a city. I'm not sure if you use I know you used to use WhatsApp or Viber here in Australia, but if you know some Chinese friends, they probably use a similar app called WeChat.
Yeah.
In WeChat in China, you can literally open a WeChat, which is essentially a messaging app. Look for retailers close to you, look for a restaurant close to you, look at the restaurant's menu, you can place order. It's all from essentially a chatting app. And all that, it leveraged independent designer. You'll be able to bypass some of the traditional restriction, on the physical store, and you're able to reach out to the audience in a way that you were never able to reach in the past.
But it's a very big competition, really.
In terms of online?
In terms of go inside of that market.
It is.
It's very difficult.
It is not easy, but I would say it's not as difficult as you may imagine from here. It's always key. The technology platform is there. It's not necessarily from us. One thing is if you want to reach out to the Chinese market, it is not all that difficult too. Because from the Chinese perspective, they want to buy foreign brands. There's certain prestige associated with buying foreign brands. And they're not so familiar yet to differentiate between your brand versus other more established brands.
I think it's interesting that, Chinese consumers traditionally have purchased the European luxury brands. I think that's what Nicola was getting towards is, Louis Vuitton, they want, the big label European brands pretty much own that market. But I've spoken to a lot of consultants in the market who said that it's moving in a different way now. So that has reached market saturation, and then looking at opportunities with interesting smaller designer labels, so more multi-label boutiques opening up in the Chinese market. And obviously, LVMH's private equity arm, El Capital, has acquired, I think it's 4 Australian labels now. So it's C Folly, 2XU, that's not how you pronounce it, it's how do you pronounce it? I'll call it 2XU, and RM Williams and C Folly. And so, and I spoke to them about why is it that you're acquiring Australian labels? You're backed by LVMH. What have we got that's so interesting? And one of the things he said is that Australian brands are very, very talented at storytelling. We know how to create brands with stories and that resonate with consumers, whereas labels in China and Southeast Asia are very good at production, logistics, but not so much the marketing and the storytelling and the design development. So I guess, there's opportunities for Australian designers in that way. Nicola, you said that you've started exploring export opportunities. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
But they were not Chinese, or they were Asian, but not Chinese, like Indonesia or Philippines. So they are more smaller country, and like Arabic country, Emirate.
Yeah.
So really it's a different approach, that they are more, they still have that brand, looking to the big brand like Louis Vuitton or Gucci or any others, but I think Chinese is more difficult in one way or the other. I don't know why, but really it's very difficult to get inside. And be small, I think, doesn't help so much because it's a big country, and in one city they have 20 million. Yeah,
that's our entire population.
Really, to try to sell to that is very difficult to sell. If a department store will buy a lot, and maybe you don't have the possibility to make it or something. So
how did you first approach exporting? Like, how did you decide that you were going to go into the Philippines?
Because it was changing. Like everything was changed 5 years ago. Really, the market in Australia, I don't think boutiques, I don't think they will survive. I don't think boutiques, they are surviving because they are all going broke, more or less. They go in receivership or something. So I think approaching outside is... But
did you go via agents or did you go via yourself?
I think agent, after become a distribution, so it went in different stages, and I guess is more interesting because really before to export, they have to pay. So really, you have the money.
Yes.
Here you have to wait maybe 120 days and perhaps you don't get the money because they go broke.
Yes, it's another. Any designer will tell you that
So,
getting
because
money from the
again,
boutiques is
it's
another
very
thing.
small country.
Yes,
It's very
it is.
small. It's 30 million. In one city they have 20.
Yes.
So
Gary's exporting something that you've played around with or considering for the future?
Before, probably about 5 years, 6 years ago, I probably had maybe 5 or 6 accounts, which we've got to had a few in America, a few in China as well. But I guess when the economics kicked in, I kind of lost all of that. So now,
With the financial crisis?
and that kind of went all down because the dollar changed and they, didn't pick up after that. But moving forward now, like that's definitely something I definitely want to move forward with because it's such a big market out there, and I find here it's a little bit limited sometimes. I think with what your product is, and and as much as you want to grow here, but it's also got to look outside the circle as well, and work with see what's out there, and start small. I mean, it doesn't happen over like 1 or 2 seasons. Sometimes it could take 5 or 6 seasons for someone to pick you up. And I guess it's just, for me, just taking those small steps to working out what works for me, and also, having the right balance behind it rather than just jumping straight into it, like sourcing and finding all these different avenues of where you could go, whether it's through an agent or independently approaching them, or so I guess that, definitely something I want to... And
there's a challenge as well about understanding different countries' customs and duties, and, there's a lot of talk about being export ready. And I think, there's all this talk about, designers should go overseas, Yes, they should, but they should also have like you said, wait, do your research, learn what the ins and outs of exporting are, and then pursue that market.
I think with online, with that being export ready, I mean, like like with someone like Net-a-Porter, they have a London distribution centre where they can cater for all the European market and not incur those duties by sending everything off to America, and then they've got their Chinese counterpart and their US. So I think that's very important in terms of the distribution, so that you're not paying duties along the way, sort of everywhere. But it's important, I really like what you said about storytelling, and I think that's very important, that you don't lose that sense of storytelling when communicating to a customer, because I find people are very drawn to sort of lifestyle rather than what they can. It's not just clothing. I mean, clothing could be anything, but it's how that relates to their life and how it tells a story about them, in the public eye as well as they're wearing it. So I think that the importance of storytelling is very.
And we were talking earlier about your appointment to Seduce and how it was the right time because the company has a new general manager, and you want to bring back the glory days of Seduce.
Yes. Can
you tell me more about that and the kind of vision that you guys are working on, and some of the new people that are working there to make that a reality?
Well, I in my mind, Seduce has always been sort of a boutique destination within a Westfield or a retail environment. It's always been a little bit more than a retailer. That's how I've always remembered it and known about it. So again, with having the right team now, and then an established designer on board, and we've got a great marketing team as well, and it just and Seduce are established in terms of they've got their own factory over in China that they've run, and they've been doing this for 20 years. They've got 25 standalone stores. They've got a flagship store in Dubai, and there's 4 stores in China with wanting to open more and more, and then having that retail space, they can completely control that environment and tell that story properly. So then backing that with really good designer ranges, and as I was saying to you earlier, it's, how can we give this customer fashion, and how can we extend her from where she is, but without sort of alienating her and making it really approachable as well as pretty amazing all at the same time. So it's like a really fine balance of how you can do that. But I think we're doing a good job so far, I hope. And yeah, the ranges will start to drop into store come May onwards. And
Can you, I mean, even with that top, can you talk us through some of the design processes that you are undertaking as a head designer? You have to remember this is a fast fashion chain where it's usually just samples, you know, maybe change a sleeve here or there and then put it on the racks. And when Magdalena told me the story of her top, and I'm sure she's got others, it operates like a design label.
yeah, I'm kind of proud to say that everything that we've got in the range has its own story, which is where I sort of pride on. And in particular with this print, we literally draped threads. So there is that element of really coming up with something from scratch rather than looking at it, I've seen it there, let's do that print, I like that color and I like that motif or whatever it is. So we literally draped threads, scanned them, and then digitally put it into a textile repeat. So I'm proud to say that we can do that at Seduce and then give you that element of design at a very attainable price point. And, you know, a lot of the times when I was a designer, a solo designer, it'd be like, oh, I love that, where can I get it? And then, you know, maybe Maya bought 10 pieces, maybe a boutique bought 3 pieces, and you're like, how do I answer this question to this customer that wants to get this piece? But it's like, oh, so-and-so bought a size 12, and, you know, Maya didn't get that color. And, you know, we've got a retail store that we can fill out with these things, and yeah, it's going to be available.
Yeah.
So that's a reward to have that.
And Ken, from a global perspective, are you finding that, you know, with so much competition in the marketplace and online, in stores, social media, that there's a similar change happening? Like in the Australian retail landscape, there's almost a retail revival and revival in the digital space as well. People are investing more in technology, especially big scale retailers here. You know, we were the last to market in terms of launching online stores. It's the National Women's Wear chain that launched their first online store, I think it was a year ago. Yeah. So there's a huge investment in technology in the market at the moment and a huge investment in stores. They're refurbishing, they're reformatting, they're rebranding. Is that happening on a global scale still, or are they already established?
It is. I would say what's happening right now, there's a lot of hot conversation around digital transformation.
Yeah.
In the sense of using primarily all the data points you have in the company, 2D or 3D, to help you along in the process. You mentioned about developing samples. Oftentimes designer, you want to see the actual sample. You want to approve the sample before it goes to the production, for example. But we work now with clients from the 3D design of the product. It appears on the screen, and they got the swatches, because they still want to get hand feel as a designer. They fill the swatch, drop it in a small scanner, and the latest motif appears straight on the screen.
Wow.
In 3D environment. It is at that level where they can, from that point, take it straight to the e-commerce side. That means they're able to sell the product even before they have the actual sample.
Yep.
All the approvals now is done through that digital sample. I'm currently working also on another project, a footwear company. It's a global brand. They go through a bit traditional process where you do the 3D design, they do digital printing for the samples, but they still want to see the digital printed footwear for the approval process. Once it's approved, they send it to another studio to do the photo shoots for the commercial catalogs. And that process, the studio alone costs about $1.2 million a year.
Wow.
By taking that 3D rendering, they skip that photo studio process, they skip the digital printed sample process. It's now all virtual.
Wow.
From the 3D design, making simulations, it's now all virtual.
All 3D.
So, yeah, so it's all what they call the digital transformations, being able to start from the concept and design, carry through to the commercial team, the marketing team, the branding team would do approval from that 3D, and then it go on to bulk production. And all that data is something they can push online.
Do you find that level of innovation in Australia, or are we slowly starting to get there? So I'm scratching my head thinking I haven't
The-
seen that at any of
the-
the
the-
headquarters I've visited. It's just a few, cutters in one corner.
I think that's a great question too. I mean, the Australian companies are obviously very innovative. I love the idea we mentioned about storytelling. I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
But partly due to the constraint of the physical domestic size of the market, oftentimes the adoption of such technology comes a little bit later
Yes.
compared to, let's say, a brand that currently has a global reach already.
Yes.
So they're able to leverage that quickly and see the return investment just within a matter of months.
Yes.
But I see no reason why, if I go back to how with the digital world, with the Australian brands, you're able to also reach a global audience in a way that one is not able to do so a few years ago. We can expand beyond your traditional domestic constraints, so to speak.
Gary and Nicola, do you guys operate online stores, and do you see a strong return from that? Is that a popular platform for your customers to purchase through?
For me, I definitely have an online store. For me, it's still growing. Like I'm
Yeah.
still small and still building it up. So, I get a few sales here and there, every week. But I guess it just for me, it's more about still learning and understanding it and putting it all together. But it is again, it's another full-time job in terms of having it all online, getting it all up, and making sure it's right and it's got all the proper information. But it's important. You must you have to have it. So
What's the balance between having your own online store and then stocking to online retailers and then stocking to boutiques? Do the buyers get a bit antsy about you having your collection online? Because I know that's something a lot of designers struggle with, is they want to have an online store, but their buyers are saying, then why will I buy your collection?
At the moment I don't, but they also need to understand, being a small independent label, you've got to make ends meet, and you've got to pay things weekly. So it's like that's your income to pull back into the business, and I tend to try and order like what they've ordered as well, just to have it online. But there's got to be a balance where it's like how are we meant to survive and keep moving forward if we don't unable to sell our own product online, or but it's for us to also reach it out to a broader customer overseas, or
Absolutely.
and that's important. That's how they meant to see our product. If so it's definitely.
How did you set up your online store? Did you buy was it hard to know where to start and what vendor to go through? Because you can spend anything from nothing to I'm broke in terms of building an online store.
I was actually quite lucky. A few years ago, I got the grant from the government to build an online store, which was fantastic. So, I got that grant. So, and then kind of got someone to build it up, and had meetings with them to tell them this is what I want, this is how I want it to look, the feel. So that was. But if I was to financially do it myself, it would be a different story. Completely different
Designer
story.
grants are an important thing. If you can apply for one, do it.
But I think, did you see, back to what he was saying, Gary, the boutique, there's no competition between e-boutiques and boutiques, because really, when a boutique buys only like, 2 size 8, 1 size 10, this and that. So really, other people wants to buy, so really it's no competition. Because a boutique doesn't sell like 10 of this, 10 of that, and 10 of...
Are their orders getting smaller and smaller?
But no, the order normally, a boutique doesn't order
full.
more than 3 of each size, if they buy all the size. So really a size 14, maybe they don't buy size 14 and you have size 14 in your e-boutique, or maybe they don't buy size 6 and you have the size 6 there. So really, it's not a competition with the boutique, because the boutique really, they have their own clients that they buy from them. So really, it's no competition at all.
When I'm doing my prices and when I'm sending it out to everyone, you put the recommended retail price as well, and that's kind of the guide that they all have to go along. Because I've had in the past where, like a boutique will say, "Oh, look, this online store that's stocking your brand has actually got it down $20 cheaper than I'm selling it in store." So you just got to, you've got to balance it out and give them a guideline and like this is the actual price rather than them kind of just going off and doing their own thing as well. So I find that was a little bit of a struggle with, you know, dealing with boutiques online as well. So yeah, kind of feed them all the information to
To get it right.
Yeah, to get it right, so then no one's, you know, $10 here or $15 because they pick it up, and as a customer, they'll, you know,
Oh yeah,
they'll
there's price
know,
comparison search engines where you can
Yeah,
type in
and
what
they'll-
you want and all the different price points come up. So it's vital now more than ever, if anything.
Absolutely.
We have about 3 minutes left, so I'm going to throw it out to questions from the audience if there are any. There has to be one. Yes, lady at the front. So just to repeat the question so everyone heard it, is if the Australian industry could do more to support you as fashion designers, what would that be? How would that be? Wow. Good question.
There's so much you want them to do.
Yeah.
Where do we begin?
I guess for me, like, you know, more government grants to help build business, like, and support to, you know, push the brand and, yeah.
I always found it strange that a bank will lend you money to buy a house, but won't lend you money to build a business. And, you know, I think without business and without a society that's creating and innovative, it's very difficult to push that society forward. I think, I found that that financial support for young business was not there from the banks. So maybe if the governments could support the banks, and therefore, you know, you don't just want to be
they
given...
don't need any more support, honey.
Well, no, I mean to support them in terms of supporting talent and, you know, supporting innovation and supporting business. I mean...
Putting more restrictions on them, like you have to fulfill a certain quota in terms of supporting small business. You can't just finance BHP and, you know, all the big businesses.
Yes.
You have
to finance
Yes, I agree.
small business, creativity, innovation-driven young people.
Yeah.
I think that's what we don't get in this country, definitely.
And what about you, Nicola? You've been
But
here for
I
a very
guess
long time.
it's the same sort of things. They
Yeah.
have to support more young people, but in the same time continuously support them and get to the point that that they can work without the support.
Absolutely. And, you know, obviously the Australian Fashion Chamber has launched recently, which is headed up by the Vogue Australia Editor-in-Chief, Edwina McCall. So they're looking at lobbying the government for more change. So we'll be following that quite closely, and hopefully there will be a better framework for supporting our designers. And on that note, if we could all please thank our speakers for joining us today.
Thank you.
I'd like to offer a special thanks to Dassault Systems for supporting the event, and for IMG Australia for graciously allowing us to host it. Thank you all for joining us.